Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
This week on the show, we're going to continue our conversation with Christopher Knight. But before we do that, just reminding you where you can find us. We're on Twitter at Fancounters Live. You can always find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Fancounters. And our email is always available if you want to send us show suggestions, comments, questions, and you can send those to
hello@fancounters.com.
All right. So you ready, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's all Brady, and I can't wait for them to hear about hair.
Yeah, we talk about the Brady's hair. Now, were they told to get a perm? I mean,
what goes on there?
That's a burning question. And then also, we're going to talk about his appearance on the Hollywood Medium show that he did with Tyler Henry, talking to his dad. Was he really talking to his dead father?
You'll find out.
Right now on Fancounters.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the PodFix network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
You mentioned the fact that you tried to distance yourself from it, and that's kind of what people think Eve Plumb is doing. Barry Williams has wrote on his website that she's not comfortable being known as a Brady. Were there more negative things happening for her because of her role on that show, that she has sort of taken a step back from, public appearances and that kind of thing?
Well, this is where I want to be careful, because everyone has a right to be themselves and handle things the way that they handle it. I did it my way, and I needed to go through that process, and I'm giving you an insight as to what that process meant for me and how I ended up with this perspective. I can only gather and guess, what Eve's positions are, because I love Eve, and I appreciate her for all of her uniqueness, as I do everyone. And she might look at this more so from an artistic point of view. Now, my family was artists. My dad was an actor. My mom was an artist. And they hated, well, my mom especially,
right.
Didn't like the show, not just because it depicted a better family than the one she was rearing, or more unified, but it was banal. That was the word she continually used. It was just sappy, sweet, stupid, not real. It wasn't adult. It was all the things that it was. I mean, it was a kid's show, I mean, she didn't like us watching television. Why are you watching? She would watch the Flintstones. Why are you watching that? That's not for you. And all. I mean, she was an elitist with respect to art.
Okay.
And we weren't doing that. We there's no pretense that the Brady Bunch wasn't really. It wasn't up for any awards. There was no Emmys being handed out. And she recognized Bob as truly an artist too, as an actor. My dad as well. Because of his previous work on the Defenders, and later, you'd be clear, he didn't really have much room to show any of that during the Brady Bunch, much to his own frustration. So in a way, Eve is go back to Bob. Bob, it's not unknown that Bob had an issue with
right.
Sherwood with respect to the show and the content and so forth. But if Bob had his way, that show would have never had any life in syndication. It would have been destroyed by its depth. And I understand it. I mean, doing something depthy is a lot more fun for an artist. But it wouldn't have borne the fruit that this show gave us and gave the world. The show was different than that. In other words, it was a misplaced need for his art. And I think in Eve, in her case too, she was on her way to being a regarded actress. Even right after the show, I think she was nominated. I think for one of her movies of the week for an Emmy, and may have been that she's gotten bruised because. I like to think of it like an orbit. You can shoot a rocket up into the atmosphere, but to get it to stay into orbit means you have to shoot it a hell of a lot higher.
Yeah.
And there are very few people that get shot up so high as to stay in orbit. continually. I mean, those are the Robin Williams. Some because of talent. I'll use Robin as that example, or Michael Jackson example of talent, unlike anybody else. And then there's others who find themselves for a time in an orbit, but it's not going to last forever. It's coming back down to earth.
Yeah.
And when you do, you can look back at some of the things that maybe you think caused you to come back down to earth. Could have been that you just wasn't there yet. And I think then you can look at this thing as being an example of something that kept your orbit lower. And maybe that's what Eve thinks. And so, she just wants to get away from it. I've discovered that there was no getting free of it. And that I could enjoy it for what it was and not have it influence my appreciation for art, as I have that as much as she does. And I would, of course, like to say that I'm only going to do artistic pieces, things that personally satiate me on an artistic level. But I'm not in a position to make those calls. I'll end up working on the stuff that I can work on. I'm pragmatic about it. She's more artistic in her approach, and somehow the Brady Bunch doesn't measure up to that artistic element. She's not Jan, and if you look at the Jan character, it was filled with all kinds of angst.
It's hard to be the middle child.
But Peter was a middle child.
I know.
I contend it's
but
actually
boys,
easier to be the middle
boys,
child.
It's easier.
It's like you don't have to worry about who you are.
But
you can be
that
whatever
character
you want.
really did. Jan really did try and find her place in the world, and I think that maybe it was because of her character why Eve as an actress maybe pulled away a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Chris,
but if you look at the scripting of the characters,
mm-hmm.
they weren't designated that way. There was no, and Jan, when in the third year, she's going to be filled with a bunch of angst. She's going to be the anxious child. I mean, that's what's great about the middle child. I mean, we all have these preconceived notion of the youngest and the oldest. It's not as clear as what the middle ones are, especially if there's multiple middle ones.
Mm-hmm.
But if you break the Brady's into threes, and you got two youngest, you got two oldest. All right, one's a girl, boy, and one's a girl, one's a boy. They're the oldest, so they're the leaders. And we got these two cute ones, and they're the babies, and they're just cute. No one defines what the middle is. That's what I loved about it. It's a white sheet. It's blue sky. It'd be whatever you want. Well, the fact is other than older and younger and then middle, no one built these qualities. They weren't the qualities that the characters exhibited weren't by design. They were an outgrowth of who we were.
Okay.
They picked up on who we were and just wrote it into a script. So Eve, as an anxious, person like that, it's evident from when she was a kid. That's what they were picking up on. She doesn't, maybe appreciate it as much to watch it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I find it all very, very humbling, humorous, and in it, sort of a story of life. I mean, we all have different ways of handling and dealing. We have different lives, different paths that got us to where we're at, and a right to view things the way that we view them. So my position with Eve is, you might find it easier not to fight it, but that's not her. So it doesn't affect my relationship with her. I find her incredibly interesting because she's different than I am.
When I was in high school, a book comes out from Barry Williams, and he's publishing what was advertised to be a tell-all book, Growing Up Brady. He says he's going to reveal on-set secrets and things like that. So when a fellow cast member writes a book like that, are you made known that ahead of time? Are you nervous about the content? What was happening when that book came out for you?
No, I try to be as transparent as possible. And what Barry had is his memory of things. And Barry's very thorough, which I respect about Barry, and he engaged all of us. he gave us an opportunity to tell our stories. Now, there's different ways of viewing that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that some people were taken aback by him wanting their stories in his book, but then not be offered any component piece of his earnings on that book. And my position was, well, yeah, don't give it to him if you're planning on writing a book using it.
Right.
Because that should be in your book.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to write a damn book, what's the harm in it? I mean, I tend to, I know how difficult it is for me to write, and I was probably never. I mean, there's another book I can write, and there's plenty to write about that has nothing to do with any of the stuff that Barry wrote about. So these stories probably are best to hand Barry because he's writing a book.
Okay.
So whatever stories there might have been, Barry only knew the stories that he knew from his personal experience, right? He wasn't going to make up stuff that he cursorily, had some data points on from a third party and concoct a whole other story. And that's what I really appreciated. He came to all of us to see if we mind sharing stories, and then he would sit down with us and get our recounting of that story. And some of those stories might have intersected with his and given a different perspective on an aspect of a story that he knew. And some were completely unknown to him, like the one in the book about me. But, he actually mentored me through it because it wasn't something that I was, comfortable with sharing because I didn't know if Eve would approve of it. And so I said, listen, I can tell you this, but you can't use it unless you get approval from Eve.
Right.
And, and I thought that would never happen.
Guess
but
you were wrong.
Eve didn't mind at all either. So again, that's what I love about Eve. I mean, Eve, there are some things that she's very sensitive to, and other things that are just fairly natural for her. So it's yeah. So I appreciated Barry doing it. Matter of fact, it's a reference. It's hard to remember all 717 shows, and what for instance, what the subplots were, unless you watch them all the time. But frankly, I never watch a rerun on anything. I'm not a person who wants to watch a movie a second time. I'm hardly want to eat the same thing I had before. There's just so much more to consume. If I continue to go backward, I'll never go forward. It's sort of my attitude in life. So I don't tend to watch, the Brady Bunch when I'm turning channels and I see it. Certainly, it's not. It wasn't constructed for an adult. It was constructed for a kid anyway, and I'm no longer there. But it's lingering on the show. It just sort of brings giggles. It's kind of like not even me, but I know it is. So it's like watching sort of a past lifetime. And then there's move on.
That
so
is
I don't
a good
really
outlook.
remember the episodes that well, and especially when you shoot them, you don't really, episodes that had very little to do with, I can't remember very well, because I was sort of like, in 2 pages of the script, and then the story went on without me, and I have a recollection of them,
right?
But I don't intimately remember them. Barry's book is a way of rifling through all the plots and subplots.
During the before-mentioned NBC interview, it came out that you were the most likely to have a celebrity guest visit you on the Brady Bunch set. And one of those visitors was Michael Jackson. How did that friendship get started, and did you stay in touch with him until he died?
No, I did not. Soon after the show went off and then I got myself into business, I drifted completely away from entertainment, and I'm really, even to this day, don't have many friends in the entertainment industry per se. It's not like I make my living off of just entertainment.
Right.
And so having that kind of a fractured involvement with entertainment, I don't go out of my way to maintain entertainment relationships simply so it stokes my career. I've never felt, maybe I'm terrible at that, but I just find myself not in the center of things, and I kind of like my life, so this is the way it works. And my friends are from varied walks of life all over, some entertainment, some mostly engineering or science. But meeting Michael Jackson was certainly, he wasn't at that time what he would become. And, whenever you have these introductions sort of it was a on camera kind of thing. I don't know what we were doing. We were working on something. We found ourselves on the same lot and interacting. And Michael and I exchanged phone numbers. I think I was 15, probably 14 or 15 at the time, and we were the same age. I was a big fan of the Jackson 5. And I guess he was a fan of the Brady Bunch, and we were aware of each other, if not from the show and my show and his singing, then from the fan magazines that we were both. You were
probably both in at the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. But it was one day, and just maybe a couple of half hour or so of interaction. I can't even remember the interaction, to tell you the truth, but I do remember something interesting that happened. I don't know, 6 months later, maybe it was less than that. The time frame is not well remembered. I got a call. It was, what time was it? 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. And I didn't have my own phone back then. Nobody did. I mean, it was the house phone,
right?
Where I lived with my family, and it was Michael Jackson calling me after he had done a performance. He was in London. He had done they had just gotten off stage, or they just finished. I think I remember a command performance for the Queen. maybe that's lavishing it a bit, but he had done a performance there in London, and it called me, and it was really sort of about. Really not much, but I remember. I thought it was interesting. He's calling me. I'm a person he barely knows. I mean, we just met, and even then it wasn't like yesterday. It was like maybe it was a month later. But he had a much busier. Well, he had a chaotic life compared to mine. It was, as we would all learn.
Right.
I wish I could remember all the conversation, but I do remember vividly the part where he was asking me if I liked girls. I can't recall if it was yet or if I placed the yet in that.
Oh, okay.
In my mind, but we were both of that age, and that's what he was asking me, because it wasn't because that conversation is not an unknown conversation by any guy at 13, 14.
Right.
That are being honest with one of their friends, because I wasn't, and I was constantly reminded of it, because Eve had a big crush on me all through those years, and it was like, well, I'm not, I'm just not there yet, I'm just not interested. I mean, the funny thing was I was big into building rockets, I was like, and I was into building models. I wasn't interested in girls. So, I mean, that my mom would even ask me, Tom, are you I don't know what she was asking me, but it was always like, you don't know.
You'll know.
But it was like, that'll happen when it happens, but I'm not, it's like there, but then there was no other context to that question. At that time, interestingly. It wasn't though the question was loaded. Maybe in the ways that my mom asked, maybe it wasn't. I was just too naive to know that it was loaded. Like she was trying to figure out, what my sexuality was. It was like, no, I was just thinking, no, I'm just not there yet. I'm interested in my models. Leave me alone. Especially made aware of the fact that, that, because Eve was, so, and it was like, what do I do with this attention? I don't, it just makes me uncomfortable, and that stuff comes around. But Michael was asking me the same damn question, and I didn't have any other reference point, so I didn't assume that it was a question that was loaded from his point of view either. So, but maybe looking back on, I'm wondering if it was. I don't know. Maybe he was, but I think that, he and I were probably, quite similar, at least with respect to our natural maturity levels. Like I matured late. I believe that, he seemed to be of the same kind of kid-likeness at 14 that I was. I don't know at that point how much of it was influenced by other things. Couldn't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that much of that stuff really occurred at that time in his life.
I think he was probably just lonely, just looking for someone
to talk to. Well, and that's what I also thought at the time. He's calling me. He's a half a world away, and he's calling me. And I thought about, I should have probably picked up the phone and called him. You know,
Right.
after that, but I never did.
Yeah. Huh.
But that's my tendency is I'm, you know, I'm about what's in front of me.
Okay.
It's hard. It's hard to deal. I mean, you got some questions on here about Tyler Henry. It's like, or you had some.
We're coming up to
Maybe
him.
not questions. I saw the top end, but the Tyler Henry, it's like, you know, okay, I don't have time to be. Life is too rich and too confusing as it is in the real here and now, than to be worried about some other space and and dimension. So I have not that I have little curiosity of it. I have little time to deal with it.
Well, let's go there real quick because you mentioned Tyler.
I was going to go somewhere else, but go ahead.
I know. Well, let's get it over with because, and I was telling Elizabeth in the opening that I wanted to watch this clip of you on this show, but they want to charge me $1.99 to do it. And I thought, well, I'm going to talk to you today. I'll just find out from you what happened.
Splurge.
So.
To find out from me what happened?
Well, yeah.
Well, what's interesting is another aspect of myself that I don't watch anything I do. I can't. It upsets me. It always has, and it's better for me just not to watch me.
Mm-hmm.
I have to work kind of like understanding what the wind is doing by looking at the leaves. I never saw the show.
So do you feel, though, when you were taping the show, did you feel like he was an authentic person?
There might be the difference in this. I don't want to. I'm implying there could be a disconnect between my experience and your experience because for those who watched the show, we were. I mean, I think my interview lasted well over an hour. But if I'm not mistaken, I know there's been a couple. My wife tells me because she's big into this stuff. She's watched the show.
Okay.
There's been a couple of variations of the show, in which case not all the same original matter, I guess, was on a subsequent episode.
Okay.
But of the hour and a half, I mean, on the show they used 10 minutes. So what 10 minutes is kind of important because there's a lot of different subject matter, that was covered in it. And my experience was more broad than ultimately what they selected to show the audience. Okay. They couldn't use everything.
But do you feel you were connected to your father? Do you think that was real?
Oh, by the way, everything was real. And I'm not into this. It's not like I was asked like the day before, before doing I didn't know who Tyler Henry was, and I knew that I was, contacted maybe a month earlier. I said, sure, we picked a date, put it in the calendar, and then they were coming to the house, and it's like, okay. And then I got a call. I said, so what do you want to go over? It's like, what? Yeah, I mean, he's coming over. If there's who do you want to get in contact with that's on the other side? And I go, well, nobody. I don't need to contact him. I'm fine. Do you have any questions or outstanding issues that you need to have resolved? And it's like, no, I really don't. I'm starting to think, I think I'm a bad person to have said yes to this because I have absolutely no need to be interviewed.
Okay.
And so and he comes. He doesn't know who you are, and truly I believe that because I didn't see the coin drop. I think that he knew that I'm from television, but not something he remembered me from.
Okay.
I don't even know if he knew. I think he might be one of the is he a millennial? He's after a millennial.
Oh yeah, he's like 19 or 20, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know what I don't think this generation has a title yet. They'll be getting one in the next 5 years.
I don't know.
But I don't think he, grew up with the Brady Bunch.
No, okay. Definitely not.
And may not have even seen the reruns.
He consumed. So I don't think he recognized me, or he really knew where he knew me from, if he knew me at all. So it didn't really linger there. It wasn't like he could do research even because the stuff we dealt with there was nowhere to go for that research. So everything was real that came out of him. I was astounded. And he's quite talented.
Okay.
Quite talented. But the things that transpired, even though I'm not a person who needed to contact anybody on the other side, they came through him, and apparently my dad is around. Okay.
All right then. Let's just go with that.
And I told him then that I don't know if it made it on the show, but I said, "We'll tell him that he can't be around unless he's invited." just like my dad to just
drop
make
in
himself at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stay, not just drop in. Just make yourself at home and stay. But I think the thing that I was most intrigued by was that with my father coming through, there was some, my dad was an interesting, bon vivant character, better friend than father, and although he tried, he did his best. He wasn't a harmful person in any way, so it could be much worse. But just a little bit clueless, and self-centered. Typical actor.
But wait, you don't come across that way at all. So you can't say typical actor.
Well, I don't consider myself an actor. I wasn't like I was driven to it. I was accidentally sort of hooked and I washed away with a tide is what happened with me. And luckily I did. I mean, I got to imagine somebody who has no idea what they're, and nor should they at that age, knowing what they want to do with their life, and they get sucked out by a current, a tidal wave, and then have this incredible Rudyard Kipling life, it's like, and then get deposited back, and you're better off for it, and other people maybe, it was horrific, you were in control of anything, but it's like, no, I think that, the things that I saw, I wouldn't have ever thought that I needed to see, and absorb them all. So, but I think that the thing that most impressed me, was that he apologized, and the curiosity to me was what he seems to, as a spirit now, have not just a recognition of how he was, and throwing out an apology for that, but has grown since then. And that was the oddest thing for me. It's like he's like, well, that's interesting. It seems like that happened after he passed away. And he said, and I asked Todd, I go, does that happen? And he said, yeah. But like the spirit grew up after he passed away. Yeah,
that's
matured or had a transformation. And as a spirit, he's a different person than he was as a person.
Okay.
But much more, aware.
All right. So the name of our show is Fancounters. So the number one thing we want to know is, do you have any strange or funny or weird memories that stick out with fans from your childhood or even your adulthood? We get a lot of people saying, I get it caught in the bathroom. That's kind of weird. And lots of people would prefer that people not talk to other people in the bathroom. Tell us about some of your fan encounters as a kid.
Well, not wanting to, add to that list of bathroom encounters, but that is my big one.
Is it? We get that a lot. Isn't that strange?
So I'm in McSorley's. McSorley's is the oldest or the second oldest bar in New York.
Yeah.
Down at Wall Street. And old, really old. But at this point, this is back when I was doing the soap bar. This is back in 1981. 81. And I'm living in New York. I'm visiting a friend who lives in Queens at McSorley's. And they had, I think at that time, they only had the one bathroom. But it might have had just one, because back in the day when it was a bar, it was for men, and there was no need for having a separate
women's room.
I guess a separate place for women to go. So and I seem to recall that there was only one. I've been back since, and there's two bathrooms, so I don't know what I was recalling, but I do remember that the urinals themselves were built into the wall, big, kind of like tiled things, like pre-urinals, like ancient urinal, like the they made a urinal copying this kind of thing. It's like, it doesn't need to be this big, and maybe we can make it in one piece as opposed to building it into the wall. Yeah. And all I know is it's floor level too, right? So maybe you don't know.
Maybe
I have some ideas.
Nick knows. I'm sorry, Elizabeth.
I know what you're talking about.
I'm in this bathroom doing what guys do, and again, women don't appreciate this as much as they deny that we don't actually look each other in the eye when we're in the bathroom. It's not a place you talk to each other. You don't make friends in the bathroom. You just keep to yourself. You look straight ahead.
Pretty much.
Yeah, see, we make besties in the bathroom.
Pretty much what you're supposed to do in a bathroom. And then I'm in this bathroom, and I'm at the urinal, and there's another urinal. There's two of them right next to me. And in comes some, brazen Wall Street type who's probably, made a big deal and now, getting a few beers through him. And he looks over and somehow recognizes me and slaps me square in the back. Peter Brady! And
no touching.
I now find myself standing in the frickin' urinal, peeing on my shoes. Not only aren't you not supposed to make friends in the bathroom or talk to someone in the bathroom, you're not supposed to touch them in the bathroom, and I think you're not supposed to knock them into the urinal. But all that not supposed to happen, I wasn't prepared for what to do when it does happen. Just I keep standing there peeing on my shoes, or do I appreciate the recognition? I thank him. I say, yeah. Do I admit that I am, or I say, do I get in a fight with the guy? What you've done, and it was absolutely absurd. Okay. But it's the length that people sometimes go to show their appreciation.
You do get to have the best bathroom one. That is by far my best bathroom one. That is the best one we've heard. Well, know that you fell in.
Well, I didn't fall into it. It's ground level.
Yeah, but you pushed me into it.
And now I'm into where it is. Not on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing to trip over to walk in, and it's almost like the size of a small closet. With these two large sides on it that your shoulders can fit into. It's like, well, damn. He didn't know what he's doing. He's a little liquored up, but he got me right in the center of the back and moved me. And it was an exceptionally riveting experience. I can't ever forget it.
Now, did you have fans come after the Brady Bunch? Like, would they come to the set? Were people allowed to come to the set and see you guys?
No, we were close set.
Okay.
I mean, there were some special people that came. Sure. At one point, Henry Kissinger came with his kids to the set. Special access, people like that. I remember once I was in the schoolroom and there was I was meeting Elizabeth Montgomery. She was coming through. It was always kind of fun to meet people who were fans of the show, because you'd never expect the people that you saw on that little television. Because I was just a 10-year-old kid, and all of a sudden I'm getting a pilot, and now this pilot's on television, and that very thing that I looked at, which I never gave another thought to. I remember vividly getting fan mail and thinking, wow, what's wrong with me? I never even thought you could write to somebody. Not that I would have. But it's like these people actually, they didn't just watch it. They realized there was somebody inside there that they could write. I never even thought that deeply. It wasn't like I was that driven by fanness. It was just these were familiar faces that came into my living room, then they disappeared,
Yeah.
There wasn't really any thought about, were they real people? When did they live? Are they alive now? None of that, and it's like, that was just really weird to me that others had that consciousness that I was completely devoid of, because they were writing me fan mail. And so, but people like, that I knew from watching television, their face, and then to see them in real life appear, there was a bit of fan in me too, that was tickled by those that I would meet that I could recognize later.
Who have you met that you felt you had a big kind of fan encounter with? Like you were the fan.
Have you been starstruck?
Well, so now I'm a young adult, and I am into girls. I'm like now doing the variety show. And now at that level, we're getting to work with some pretty interesting people. And I get to meet, Farrah Fawcett, Lee Majors, of course, I was a big fan of Farrah Fawcett. Got to work with Charo, who, for crying out loud, I wasn't sure how old was back then, let alone now, because she hasn't changed at all.
Oh my God, is she still alive?
Yeah, I just saw Charo 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
God, she looked great.
Okay.
She looked like she did when I worked with her back in '79.
Yeah.
And I thought at 79, maybe she was 20. I thought she was 45 or something. I think then.
She's 67 now.
She's only
67?
67?
Yeah. I just looked it up.
Wow.
So she's only 5-6 years older than I was.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that at the time.
I didn't either.
Maybe because I was aging her by being married to an older guy. I don't
Yeah.
know. But she's more my contemporary. Let's see. In '79, I was what was that? I've been 22.
Okay.
No, I wasn't even 20. Well, no. 79, I would have been 21. Yeah, 21. So she was 28. It was great because we were doing a little thing where it was sort of a Western riff on Cinderella. She was Cinderella, and I was Prince Charming, I guess, because I got the shoe. Barry played the black hat. I played the white hat, but so it was like kind of a riff on Cinderella with I don't know what character he was in Cinderella, but he was Cinderella's mom. I don't know.
Okay.
But I remember there was a stop action moment where I leap in my cowboy gear and I grab her shoe or grab her foot, which obviously is a shoe, and then we have to hold, and then she removes herself from the shoe, and then we carry on. She disappears out of the shoe, and then I have a shoe. I can't remember the rest of the plot, but these are these are small vignettes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she was wearing Daisy Dukes. They weren't even called Daisy Dukes yet because I don't think Daisy Dukes
Yeah, because
existed
Daisy
yet,
hadn't worn them yet.
and she and Chara was had quite the body, and she didn't have much shorts.
Yes.
But the scene required me to grab her shoe and look up.
Oh.
And I still have a picture of my face looking up. It was like I had to hold it because then she has to disappear. Otherwise, I would. It was a great moment.
It was a great moment.
Nice.
Great moment. Let's see. Who else? Oh, I met Natalie Wood, and she was like one of the most beautiful people I'd ever seen. It was like I was mesmerized. I was like, wow, that's a beautiful person. Met a lot of people. We worked with Milton Berle. Some people are more enjoyable than others.
Have you ever had a stalker?
I was back in the early, maybe 72 or so. I remember playing football outside and coming home, and my mom was in the foyer with a gentleman in a suit, like a dark suit, and he was with the FBI. And my mom said, this gentleman's here because he says that there's somebody who's making threats against your life. And I go, uh-huh. I ran upstairs. I got whatever it was I was coming home from. All right. And
See you later.
And
Very
she would share with me
concerned.
that, that's what she told the guy. She said, what am I going to do? He's going to be a kid.
Right.
And back in that day, it was like you didn't. There was no helicoptering. Hell, my mom told us to go play on the freeway.
Yep.
We'd take a bike and go wherever we wanted, and then come back for dinner. She didn't take the threat very seriously. I didn't obviously understand it or take it seriously at all, and it turned out to be nothing.
Well, that's good.
So did I have a stalker? I guess
Maybe.
I had somebody out there who was making
That's what they say.
some threats, but for what reason I don't know. I'd have run faster than him.
So from time to time, we've seen that you've done some fan conventions like Comic-Con or other small things like that. What do the fans tell you when they meet you? What do they mostly say?
Well, they want to know if we're friends. What was my favorite episode? Their family is just like ours, or their family wasn't at all like ours, but they grew up on us, and they are in part who they are because of the Brady Bunch.
Okay.
They learned English through the Brady Bunch. Their kid now watches it. Yeah, they didn't even introduce it to them. I get stuff like that. There's not much. A lot of it is. It's interesting. It really is not questions much anymore. As it opens somebody. They feel like this is the part that's weird. I mentioned it earlier. Is being a member of everyone's family when you haven't met anybody in the family,
Right?
But being treated like that. There's a progression in relationship. You start off as people who shake hands who never met, and you get to know each other's name, and something leads to another, and you spend more time around each other, and it goes from acquaintance to a friendship, and then it grows into a deep friendship with time and access, if that's what it's destined to become. And all of a sudden, be that without any of the precursors to it is just a really strange thing, because it goes both ways. You're right. I don't know them from Adam,
but they feel they know
me.
you. Yeah.
And that's the disconnect. That's the weirdest part. That's the part that takes a lot of energy, because it's understandable for me to be wanting to be distant and put them at arm's length, where really they are for me. They're just not even an acquaintance at this point. But for me, I'm already a family member. For them, I'm already a family member.
Right.
So, but that's sort of disrespectful and off-putting, and I tend to want to turn that on and off. I mean, if I'm doing this, if I'm in a space in my own life, and somebody sort of attaches themselves like that, it is odd, and I will push a little bit. Try not to be, I can't assume that I know them. I don't. But if it's at an event like that, much clearer that I am able to just jump in, just take it for what it is, and become a member of the family that they believe I'm part of, to some degree. I mean,
because it'll be over in a minute anyway.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, but it's the oddest thing about being somebody that people recognize and have for their entire life. Now, I've had an entire life to try to get used to it, but again, you can't get used to that. You can't get used to not knowing somebody and having them treat you like they've known you forever.
You also never know when that's going to come up.
Somebody with dementia. I imagine to some degree it's like, well, who are you? But I'm not the crazy one in this case.
Now, Chris, you exposed your life to viewers on The Surreal Life and My Fair Brady, so I can imagine that the choice to air your whole personal life on television would be difficult to decide whether or not to do. So did you make the right decision in doing that series of shows, or is that sort of where you live in regret?
Sure. No, I absolutely no regrets. I absolutely do believe that, because it's part of my constitution to always do things that are difficult. As a friend used to have a saying, it's like people look where the light is, and sometimes the answers are in the dark corners. You got to just shed light where it's not, and that which we might be frightened of probably has answers. It can provide some answers, some clues, and reality wasn't something that I ever. Who knew what reality was, and something I really wanted to do. But the experience of doing it, it proved to me it's not something I really want to do a lot of, but at the same time, it was very challenging. Hardest thing I've ever done. And I don't think I was particularly good at it. I had a partner who was really good at it. But that was, and that was fine for me. I don't really need to be the lead, or be in the commanding position if I'll acquiesce to somebody who's got a better handle on it. I am not by nature an open person. I mean, I like to be, I'm not big into social media. I do have it as a consequence of being in business, but I'm not a big believer of sharing every thought that comes through my head. I see no good that can come from it. I believe in the power of anonymity and mystery, which is completely being lost, and maybe we'll come back to it at some point. I don't know. But the reality thing was, first started off as Surreal Life, and when I was I was asked to do Surreal Life in season 3 of their Surreal Life, but I was, during their production, planned to head over to Italy for a friend's wedding, and she's a very close friend, and had already booked it all, and it was like, I can't back away from this now. And I didn't know if I wanted to do reality television, because the reality that I knew at that point was early in the reality arc, but it was, there's Paris Hilton stuff, and it wasn't my kind of thing. It seemed like, it wasn't what I consumed, and I wasn't sure if anybody should do it or if it'd kill your career. But at the same time, that third season of Surreal Life was going to have something to do with music. And I am so unmusically aligned that it's not, I got the music in me. Well, if there's a person who's got the music in him, then there's a person who doesn't have the music in him somewhere else, and that's me. So I thought, well, that was the kicker. It's like, no, I can't miss my friend's wedding, and I don't want to be associated. I can't be, reality and music. I'll just embarrass the hell out of myself. No,
Right.
There's nothing I can offer there. So I passed, and then I found myself being asked to do the next season. And then I thought, is this sort of like the experience of me running from the real life Brady Bunch, and then finding it facing me in Australia? It's like, really? No, I really have to take this seriously. Okay, so I called a few people that I trust, and one of those people was Florence, and asked her if I should do it. I said, what do you think? Because I remember prior to this, and she was so upset with this, that I had gotten called over 6 months about doing this. It started off this huge thing in Vegas, this boxing match where they were going to have 3 fights. There were going to be an Osmond and a Jackson boxing. It was going to be, we wanted a Brady and a Partridge boxing, and we wanted, I don't know who else was going to be in the third, the other fight. They were going to do the celebrity boxing thing. And I said, and they're going to pay all kinds of money. And I was still working up in the Silicon Valley. I go, all right, well, when if you can tell me anything more about it, when you don't have to say yes or no now. It's just like they're thinking about this. I go, okay, I think they're crazy, but since I don't have to say yes or no, I say, when they have more details, they can come back to me. And they'd call me every month about the details, but the show gets smaller and smaller. It wasn't what it was at the beginning, and then finally it had to come down to me saying yes or no. I said, no, thank you, and.
Okay.
Actually, I had said no, and then they kept calling back. And I meant no. No, I really mean no. And then finally no meant no because they had no more time for my no's. And I said, no, really, I mean no. No, I can't see myself doing that. I go, with boxing, to me, it's like you can lose, but you got to look good boxing. And if you're not a boxer, and I'm boxing Danny Bonaducci, who does box, you're just going to look like you're going to look awful, and you're going to get your ass beat. So it's like there's not enough money in the world. This is where they start playing on the desperation of others who were in a different place than I was in. And fortunately, I wasn't in such a desperate place that I had to say yes to something like that. Next thing I know, within 1 week, Barry is doing it. Barry said yes to it. Of course, Barry said yes to it. Barry said yes to anything. And then he did it, and then, he looked bad, and Florence was mad at him. Florence was that her family was besmirched or damaged, or he didn't represent family well. I'm not sure because he couldn't box or he lost or whatever it was, but he shouldn't have said yes to that. And I completely agreed with her because I had said no for myself. So I kind of assumed that that's where the answer was going to come when I was calling there now about this Surreal Life thing. Totally different. No, you got to do that. Yeah, this is where the business is going, and it was a big shock to me. But it was like at that point, my mom was just gravely ill, and she had already had a lumpectomy. She had lung cancer, and she wasn't faring very well. And this was going to take 2 weeks, but she was out of the hospital at this point during the period of time that we're going to have to go in there. And I guess I'm saying yes to this before even knowing that that's the position that she'd be in. But she was in no real physical state to truly, at this point my mom and I had to have an adult relationship, and a good one. We'd kind of purged all the childhood stuff, and to ask her advice on it. But she wasn't in a position where I could, and Florence was right there. So in my asking Florence, it was twofold. It was from a perspective of the industry and art, and then the other was sort of like mom, because that's clearly where she was coming from with respect to Mary.
Yes. How dare you?
Because she was very maternal when she was complaining about Mary's decision to say yes to this thing. So feeling that she said yes to it really gave me a green light. And then I talked to 2 other people. I found myself with working with maybe 6 months earlier, Eric Estrada, who did do season 2, and so I asked him his advice on it, and what did he learn and all, and he said, "Don't drink." Okay, took that note. I think Florence told me the same thing, and Dave Coulier, did he do the episode before me? He did the one after me. I seem to recall him being the third person who said don't drink, but I think actually his experience might have came after mine. Maybe I met him later, and then he said, "Yeah, the one thing I would have told you, no, don't drink." Of course, I meant not to drink, but after 20 minutes, showing up, I needed to have a drink.
Oh, man.
But it was, so I said yes to it, and it was sort of life altering. It was a very interesting 12 days. It's a challenge. That's what I took it as. It was a sort of a challenge to try to become, try to be somebody real at the same time. I learned a little bit about myself because I tended to have a little bit of arrogance, but I was surprised by the audience reaction to all of a sudden this relationship that seemed ridiculous to me. But more of the reaction was, why was I so dismissive of it? I guess I just had a predisposed position, and I certainly didn't want a relationship to start on the show, although this reminds me of Eve earlier on. It was more adolescent, and I thought it was crazy and didn't know this person well enough and didn't know how in that environment to really vet this. But I thought I would, and I did, figure it out after the show broke, and that's when Adrian and I became a relationship, and then they asked us because they wanted me to do something else for them after the Surreal Life, and then I said, well, this is my idea. They had another idea, and I didn't like their idea, and I said, well, frankly, the whole story here is this, and I thought it was, my whole idea was it was going to be, this is Pygmalion. I'm Higgins, and I'm going to polish her up. Well, that's not what happened. They loved the idea, and we did the show, and even My Fair Brady came out of it, but it wasn't, and I thought they were on my side about let's polish her up. In my mind, my arrogant mind, she needed polishing up. Well, it was the flip. It was maybe even a more interesting story. What happens when you can't polish the rock? What happens to Higgins? He kind of comes unglued. He becomes what's the sergeant in Pink Panther, and Clouseau's manager is his higher up. He just starts twitching. It's sort of like what I was left with, because she was irrepressible and big into drama. But we started a life together, and that was all real. If I'm going to do reality, it's got to be real, and it was all real, and it was very illuminating. And I had two relationships, two marriages that fell apart, and had nothing to do with picking the wrong person or picking that way they were done right. The way that your mom would tell you to do it, and it didn't work out. So I'm thinking, what the hell? Try something new. It can't end up any place different than the other two did. So perhaps there's a different way of approaching this. Of course, it didn't work out. But nonetheless, there was a lot to be learned from it.
So let's talk about the one.
So there's no regrets.
So let's talk about the one you picked now, Kara. So tell us how you met.
Well, I was, just separated by 6 months or so from Adrian, and I was invited to go back and to a friend's club in Chicago. For a party, a New Year's Eve party that he was throwing. And I had nothing going on here and sort of wanted to just, kind of get away from home because, kind of a bad year. It was very sad to me when we couldn't work out. But at the same time, it was just, I couldn't get over the drama. The drama was going to kill me. And there was no stopping it. And so it was clear that it just couldn't work. But there's a disappointment that comes with that. No matter how many times you've had a disappointing end to a relationship in the past, it doesn't really make the next one that doesn't work any easier. The previous experience, just makes it clear that you'll survive from it. You know, as I told my mom when I first got divorced the first time, that came out of the blue. It's like, you know, she said her favorite saying was, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." Mm-hmm. And she'd always said that through, you know, my entire life. And certainly it's true. And then after I was getting divorced, I go, "Mom, you're right. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And also, what doesn't kill you can happen again."
History will repeat itself.
What doesn't kill you can happen again. So that was his experience. Getting divorced is like, you know, I found out the second time. You know, what doesn't kill you, it can make you stronger, but it also can happen again. In other words, only through death can you put an end to it. So nonetheless, it was a very depressing year, end of year, and going to Chicago, and I really didn't know anybody back there, and having a party, you know, seemed like, you know, the right thing to do. I wouldn't, you know, have to deal.
Okay.
And then there was this young lady walking through with two kids, and I saw her. I mean, I knew like 5 or 10 people at this party, and that, you know, so it was this little congregation, you know, that I hung out with, but I noticed this other girl who wasn't part of that little group, and when she walked in, and that she had kids and all, but she was, you know, she just caught my eye, and it was a small place. It wasn't even that big, and I didn't have any conversation with her until it was well after midnight, and I'm sitting at this bar with her, and I can hardly hear, as a consequence of all my years in the, you know, in the Army. I don't know why I can't hear, but I guess it's hereditary. So, and it's loud, but I'm sitting next to her, and striking up a conversation. She's got a wedding ring on. At this point, I had removed mine because we were clearly apart, and Adrian had moved out. Find out that those two kids weren't hers. They were her sister's, who was at the party, and that she was just taking care of them, and she had no intention of coming to this party, but her sister convinced her of it. And her niece and nephew were there inappropriately, so she was sort of handling them and taking care of them. Asked her about, you know, well, not her kids, but she's obviously married. She got a wedding ring. No, she was separated like 7-8 months, but she hadn't taken the ring off yet. She didn't want people coming on to her. It was the last thing in the world I wanted, to have a relationship at that point. And we just chatted up a conversation, and then realized that by the end of that night or the next day, we wanted to see each other again. But I'm going back to L.A., and she lives in Chicago, so how are we going to work that out? So we worked it out, and I found myself in Vegas a month later, and maybe not even a month, 2 weeks later, I was working in Vegas, and she was going to be there as well. She actually worked for the Miss America pageant. She was the, whatever they call it, that managed the 3 contestants that are in the Miss Chicago, Miss Windy City, Miss Gold Coast are 3 of her. What do you call that person that manages that? And so those are her contestants that go on to then Miss Illinois, and then if it's one of her contestants that goes on to that wins Miss Illinois, then that contestant then goes to the Miss America pageant, and one of her girls was that year going to the Miss America pageant. It happened to be the end of the week that I was there, and so we concocted a first date in Vegas, and it just went from there. It was completely, you know, last thing in the world I thought that I needed at that point was another relationship. But it brewed, and here we are. And she's it took the journey I was on to appreciate a person as caring as Kara. I was always suspicious of people who were caring.
Okay.
And that's a weird thing, but that's the way I was raised. Like if they're caring, it's later my mom was suspicious of a show that was kind.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, well, the wrong values there, but that's how I was set up, and it took 3 relationships of people really not having your back to discover that having somebody that has your back isn't something that one should dismiss.
Okay.
But I wouldn't have been able to appreciate that, I like to think, unless I had the journeys that I had. So now I have this wonderful relationship.
Awesome. So one of the things our fans like to know is, if we looked at your DVR right now, what shows are you watching?
I am all on how things are built, science. When the next season of Game of Thrones comes on, definitely that'll be there. When Vikings comes on at the end of the month, that'll be there. There's Oak Island just started. Of course, I'm all over that. But I'm big with science and engineering and documentary type shows, history. I have a lot of that. I don't do a whole lot of the entertainment stuff. I don't. Yeah, that'll be there too. If there's a movie that's on but I'll tend to just watch it when it's on. Try to keep up with that which is in theaters, but I don't watch in theaters anymore. So
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't watch a whole lot of network television.
Okay.
All right, Chris, you made it to the end. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're almost there. I have like 2 questions and you're done.
Here you go. Last one.
Oh, news. News is my new entertainment.
News?
News is entertainment.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Well, I hope
it's so entertaining. It's a comedy.
It can be. Now, but see, now you're entering a whole new section here because are you affected by the fires or no?
No, luckily, I used to live out in that area, and I know only too well how that area can affect one, and I find that unacceptable. I like to know my home is not going to burn down or be washed away in the ensuing mud. So I'm at the beach where none of the fires will be or can get.
Okay, that's good. I just wanted to check to make sure.
Yeah,
you're not going to be affected.
Thank God, there's a lot of people I know that that were
a lot horrible.
Of people. Yeah. I mean, I used to live right near there. Horrible.
So that last question is, what goals do you have in mind for 2019? Where do you want to be?
Living
is good. Living is good.
Living is good. No, I've been having some interesting health problems that I'm trying to get a handle on, and I had some Achilles surgery earlier this year, and I got to get the other foot, another Achilles operation. So it's been a real challenge over the last 2 years. Like to be physically active, and I haven't been able to be because of these things, and I want to get back to that kind of health. I want to be able to move with alacrity. That's my goal.
Okay.
All right.
Good deal.
So,
not that I was ever much of a dancer, but I appreciate the fact that I could.
Okay.
Even if I couldn't do it well.
So where can we find you on social media?
Can't.
Okay. Fair enough. We don't have to.
I mean, no. You can find me. You can find me at my companies. You can find me at Christopher Knight Home. We do have. I'm more than me in my social media. It's a me with a business attached to it.
Okay.
So that the place to find us there is that's a good question. What are my addresses?
Well, we can just go to ChristopherKnightHome.com, right? That's kind of like where to start.
Go to ChristopherKnightHome.com.
Yeah, let's drive some traffic there.
I mean, I am on Facebook, but I don't think I have any. I can't friend anybody on my. Well, there's Christopher Knight Home has a Facebook account too, so
there you go.
That's the Facebook account to go to.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate. I mean, you've exceeded my expectations.
Well, I don't know what we covered in here and what we didn't.
We forgot. You should ask the question that your brother wanted to know, because he will be mad that his question didn't get asked, and that was whether or not you guys got to choose your hairstyles and wardrobe, like when you got your hair permed and things like that. Was that because
But everybody had their hair permed.
Well, Never had my hair permed.
Okay.
None of us had our hair permed.
Okay.
So the story of the hair is some people, like me, Mike, and Barry, more so Barry and I, less Mike, go through adolescence, and the hair changes. It went my hair, especially right in front of the sides, by the ears and back a little bit, got frizzy first, and then started getting curly, kind of everywhere.
Okay.
I was a kid; it was straight and wavy, and then it went curly, really curly, fuzzy curly. Ugly, fuzzy, curly. Barry's did the same thing. He just did it a couple of years before mine.
Okay.
Mike's would get wavier than it was when he was a kid. Bob Reed was straightening his hair all those years. And when we went to Hawaii, because of the humidity,
he
couldn't keep it straight. And it was because of all the mothers, I guess, this is what my mom said, but basically told him to leave it, that it was great curly. And so from then on, he went with the curly hair. But that was the reason for him appearing to have gotten a perm.
Okay.
It wasn't, he always had curly hair, and he was just always straightening it. And all of us started with straight hair and then would go through puberty, and it would become curly.
Cool.
No perm. And then, of course, my hair was my act of defiance. There was a little frustration that the show didn't deal with the stuff that every one of my friends was dealing with in real life, like the threat of Vietnam and all these other heavy issues. So, I felt like it was childish and silly and stupid, but what I could do is at least grow my hair long and be, revolt that way. Not caring how stupid it looked, how much it looked like a helmet, but it was mine. It was my decision.
Okay.
It's all blame it on me.
All right.
But that was the look of the time. So I was trying to emulate it, and that's where the hair came from. And now I have not nearly as much hair.
Welcome to our lives. Thank you so much for your time today. We really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Elizabeth and Nick. It's been a pleasure. I hope I gave you something to work with and haven't bored you.
Our thanks to Christopher Knight for this 2-part episode. What a great guy. Really appreciate having him on the show.
Yeah, that was a lot of information.
It was. Now, one thing that resonated with me is he mentioned the Brady Bunch and how they filmed episodes but didn't really mention what was going on in the outside world, like the Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff. I feel like that's like our podcast. We try not to go into the outside world with everything else that's going on. We could be talking news down a rabbit hole if we wanted to. But that's not what our show's about. That's not what the Brady Bunch was about.
No.
So you can find... Are we just like the Brady Bunch?
Don't go that far. We are just a family-friendly podcast that tries to get people a little bit closer to celebrity.
There you go. That's what it is. The real side of celebrity.
That's right.
As you heard this week and always. Now, as we head into the new year, we've got a lot of guests that we are approaching. And it's really funny because people are way more receptive than they were in the past.
Well, that's because now they can actually listen to episodes and know what it's going to be like.
They know what it's about, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas last year at this time, we were just like kind of struggling. And I'm really happy that we're at a point where people are coming to us saying, hey, we want to book so-and-so on your show. And it's pretty cool.
It's nice when people call us.
Yeah. So going into this new year, you can expect a lot bigger guests on Fancounters and a lot more fun. So tell your friends. This is make it your New Year's resolution that you will tell 10 people about Fancounters.
And give us a 5-star review
on all podcasting platforms.
Yes, please. Well, Happy New Year, everyone, and thank you so much for listening to Fancounters. We really appreciate it.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.
This was a podcast from the PodFix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.